For me, innovation is progress, continuous progress, not just of a company or technology, but of society as a whole. The main driver of innovation is, in fact, the market, but society embraces it only when people see the benefits. Innovation needs to be global and scalable on a worldwide level. We need to ensure that innovation drives the world forward, not just one single region.
Dear viewers, today we are filming our third interview here in Zurich and we'll be discussing the topic of innovation. I guess this term might seem quite broad to many of you, but today we'll uncover what it truly means with our guest, Mr. Markus Winterholer. Markus is Chief Sales Officer at the Swiss startup Akenza, and he's also had an impressive career working at other major tech companies. Today, he will share all the important details with us. Welcome, Markus.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Markus, many people know you as an innovation guru, but for those viewers who might not be familiar with you yet, could you briefly introduce yourself?
Sure, Dmitri. My name is Markus Winterholer. I started my career in the US, spending 11 years in Silicon Valley, a highly innovative environment at the time. I began in the semiconductor industry, helping companies create successful products that many of us still use. I traveled extensively across Asia, and thanks to my background in computer science, I've always had a passion for technology. The Internet of Things has fascinated me from the start. The IoT. I've always been inspired by the idea that everything can be connected, that all devices can be interlinked, and that we could build a world where every device is intelligent, smart devices. When I moved to Switzerland 8 years ago, I joined Siemens, where I worked on creating smart buildings and developing digital twins of buildings. At the time, this was a groundbreaking field for Siemens, and I had the opportunity to realize and develop their first smart building, turning it into a scalable product. As head of go-to-market, I successfully brought it to market. After that, I joined the company AWS, Amazon Web Services, in the cloud sector. Another innovative and exciting field. There, I built a team of 50 consultants who developed new cloud solutions for Swiss and global clients, helping them explore the new possibilities of the cloud. Following that, I worked as head of innovation at Georg Fischer, a traditional industrial company in Switzerland, before joining the startup Akenza to refocus on my passion for the IoT.
Thank you. Yes, we'll definitely talk more about what it's like to work in a small company again. Perhaps not starting from scratch, but certainly setting many creative things in motion. I think we'll cover that later. But for now, let me start with my first question. Could you explain the word innovation in simple terms? What does innovation mean to you?
For me, innovation is progress, continuous progress, not just of a company or technology, but of society as a whole. We all benefit from innovations, both big and small, and that's how society moves forward. It's always been that way, from the invention of the wheel to today. There have always been innovations that represented quantum leaps, the ones we remember. Take the iPhone in 2007, for example. It was undoubtedly innovative. But before that, we already had phones. And before that, we had computers. Innovation often builds on what already exists, rethinking it and implementing it in new ways to take the next step forward. Innovation also involves a lot of failure, a culture of failure, because setbacks are part of the process. Not every idea works, and not every idea is embraced by the market or accepted by society. Innovation is only truly successful when it drives society forward. That's when it can genuinely be called innovation. Until then, it's more about experimenting and trying things out, I'd say.
So would you say that innovation is more of a societal phenomenon and not just limited to companies? In your opinion, how willing are companies in general to innovate? And what obstacles do they face on this path?
Well, companies need innovation to move forward, but most of the time, it's about small-scale innovation. A company has a product, a service, or an offering that is well received in the market. To stay competitive, they need to innovate. This often takes the form of continuous improvement, small enhancements. By making their product, service, or offering incrementally better, they can present an improved version to their customers, staying attractive and relevant in the market. Major innovations, those that represent a true quantum leap, are rare. For a company, achieving such a significant innovation requires a great deal of effort and a willingness to venture into entirely new areas. Most companies focus 95% of their efforts on continuous improvement. However, depending on the company, 5% to 20% of their efforts might be directed towards these major leaps forward. When I worked at Amazon in the cloud sector, that was a significant innovation. The company made a bold move by venturing beyond its core business as a bookseller and retailer to establish a cloud platform. That's not something to be taken for granted. Amazon relies heavily on innovation and encourages it even outside its core business, actively supporting its employees in this regard. At Siemens, the approach was more strategically driven. There was a strategy plan focused on digital twins, which then translated into implementation across divisions for energy generation, industry, and buildings. Thanks to this strategy, I was able to access the necessary budget and implement these plans effectively.
In your opinion, what are the main drivers of innovation? If we can even define it, would you say it's the desire to become more competitive? Or is it because resources in a certain location are exhausted and companies want to remain efficient or even become more efficient with what's available? Could we sum it up as, these things are the key drivers of innovation?
The main driver of innovation is actually the market, but the market must embrace it. The market determines whether something succeeds or fails. As I've already mentioned, for me, something only qualifies as innovation if it's successful in the market and accepted by users. Before that, it's just experimenting and testing, which are critical prerequisites. When a new technology emerges, the first step is to understand it. You have to test it out. You have to figure out its limitations and determine whether it's ready to be used to develop a product. Does it even offer any real value? Not every innovation requires new technologies, but new technologies certainly enable innovation. The key drivers of innovation are, undoubtedly, a company's desire to improve, to offer better or new products, and to identify and address market needs or pain points. To achieve this, you need innovation, and innovators, visionaries, of course. You should also give your team members the freedom to explore, experiment, and learn from failure. Failure is part of the process, and it teaches us valuable lessons when things don't go as planned.
How do you effectively involve customers in the innovation process? I'm asking because you've already mentioned that this is extremely important. It is even one of the main drivers of innovation, what the market currently demands. This means you always need to be able to interact with customers. How do you approach this in your projects? Or, more generally, what are some effective ways to truly engage customers in this process?
At Amazon, for example, all innovation stemmed from customer requests. Customers would present a specific problem to Amazon, and a small team would then work on a solution, collaborating closely with the customer to see if it resonated. So, early customer involvement is essential. At Georg Fischer and Siemens, we used design thinking, engaging customers early on in workshops to understand their concerns. Is there really a need for the customer? Where is it? And do we have ideas to satisfy and cover these needs? Only in the second step did we start thinking about technology. The focus is first and foremost on the customer, their needs, and of course, the market. So, is the customer actually ready to spend money to satisfy their need? Only then do you start looking for a technical solution. However, it's possible that the technical solution doesn't work, and the idea can't be implemented. Things happen.
So it's technically unfeasible.
Exactly. The technology might not yet be advanced enough, or you might not have access to the right tools, which is why innovation can sometimes take a very long time. Take AI, for instance, artificial intelligence.
Oh, yes.
Yes, it's a huge topic, but it's not new. AI has been around since the 1960s. When I was studying in the 1990s, we were already trying to program robots with neural networks. We tried to program and train them, but we failed due to limited computing capacity. Over the past 20 years, however, computing capacity has exploded, so that's not a limitation anymore. Suddenly, the technologies we had back then are now usable, but sometimes 20 to 30 years can pass before a technology becomes widely accepted. Innovation often requires patience and perseverance.
So this just underscores the point you made earlier. Certain ideas aren't technically feasible at first, and this only becomes apparent at a later stage. Take, for example, something like ChatGPT, or AI in general. The desire for a product like that had already been there, but for a long while it just wasn't technically feasible. And now we've reached a point where all this is technically achievable. So we have revisited these ideas, so to speak, and put them on new footing, and now they work.
Exactly. The challenge is always convincing the broader public of the benefits. Technology alone rarely sells well. There are a few tech enthusiasts and first movers who are interested in the technology itself. But for innovation to be embraced by society, people need to recognize its value. This is true for every innovation. We need to identify which social problems we can solve and where we can get people excited about it. And that's a long way to go. It's not easy, but it's necessary for technologies. Companies need a structured innovation process. It has to be managed. As I've mentioned, at Siemens it was more top-down. A strategy was defined and teams executed it. At Amazon or in startups, it's more bottom-up. Everyone is encouraged to innovate, has time to work on ideas, and contribute their own creativity. We all need to stay close to the end user, even becoming our own customer, using the product ourselves, and staying in constant dialogue with people. Sure, that's where ideas and focus areas for new innovations often emerge. However, there's also a lot of resistance, and we need to take it seriously. Take concerns about AI, for example, or data collection in general. These are social issues, significant social issues that we need to address. Some societies are more open to these technologies, while others have greater reservations. So we need to acknowledge and address these concerns.
And what role does the government play in this process? Since you've mentioned regulations, how can it support innovation? I'm not referring to any specific country, just in general. Can the government support innovation, and how? Should it actually do so? What's important for making sure the collaboration with the government works well and keeps innovation moving forward?
Governments set and uphold values. For a society, it's important to see what they prioritize is also implemented on the state level. On the other hand, consumers hold power by choosing what they buy. But sometimes governments need to enforce regulations to set certain standards. It's a collaborative process that must work hand in hand.
Manchmal braucht es eben auch vom Staat Regulatorien, gewisse Sachen vorzugeben. Das muss Hand in Hand gehen.
Sometimes there's over-regulation, and that's when society needs to step in and push back. It's an ongoing tug-of-war. Governments often protect their markets, which can hinder innovation when the protection becomes excessive. At the same time, they safeguard companies that have invested heavily in innovation and want to protect their intellectual property. There's no clear black and white answer here. I find it fascinating how, in Asia, societies quickly embrace new technologies simply because they make life more convenient, like cashless payments. Such innovations are adopted swiftly and made accessible to the broader public. In Europe, we're much more cautious and conservative. Having a dialogue about this is valuable because it allows societies to determine which regulations are truly necessary and which might be excessive. It also helps pinpoint real risks and where they might be exaggerated.
Let's take a break. You are watching Andersen RnD channel, where we talk to people shaping the future. Our company, Andersen, collaborates with leading global brands and takes part in exciting projects across the globe. Follow us on Andersen RnD channel for further updates. Now, let's get back to the conversation.
Markus, since we're in your office now, it's a good moment to ask, what kind of work model do you prefer? Many people prefer the hybrid one, where you're only partially present in the office. Some want fully remote work, while others insist that people need to return to the office completely. Which model do you think is the most effective?
I believe we now have the flexibility and technology to work from anywhere. What we really need, however, is personal interaction. When it comes to communicating with clients, I need to be on site with them, no doubt. If a task has to be carried out locally, there's no debate at all. I go to the location and get the job done there. But when I have the freedom to choose, I can decide for myself where I work most effectively, depending on my schedule and the specific task. It's the responsibility of companies to provide the necessary technology and offer spaces where people can be creative, innovative, and complete their tasks in a way that adds value. In sales, for example, every hour spent in the office is a missed opportunity. You should be spending that time with clients. If it's an IT job, sometimes it's better to be in the office, where you can exchange ideas and get inspired. However, you might find it easier to focus when working from home or another location. That said, home isn't always the quietest option. If there's a lot going on or the space is limited, it may not be the ideal workspace either. People should be able to choose their ideal workplace or define it collaboratively with their company.
And how do you protect yourself against burnout in this case? It's also a vital issue.
Well, burnout. I'm not sure if the term is being used a bit too broadly nowadays, but there's certainly more stress now due to new technologies and the global competition people face. Companies can do a lot to create a positive work culture, fostering good relationships and support. Of course, we're all competing with one another. When the numbers don't add up or the economic situation is tight, performance is demanded, and some people handle that pressure better than others. This calls for a new type of management, a new type of leadership. You have to listen to people more. You have to show greater empathy. In the past, companies often prioritized promoting managers based solely on their technical expertise, paying little attention to their soft skills. I believe organizations must now focus on ensuring that empathy becomes a core quality for managers. Simply having the technical know-how isn't enough anymore. Ideally, you should take a two-track approach. Have one manager focused on the human side, someone who listens to employees, recognizes when someone is at risk of burnout, and is someone they can turn to with trust. At the same time, you have a technical leader or a performance-oriented manager who focuses on the numbers and results, but these roles need to work in harmony.
Let's move on to another important topic, one you've already briefly touched upon: AI. Many creative people, many artists were, whether rightly or wrongly, afraid that AI would leave no room for creativity. However, over time, it has become clear that AI excels at managing daily routine tasks, often completing them efficiently. This can actually relieve people, allowing them to focus more on core aspects of their work. However, there has been a rise in demand for people who are particularly creative to generate those ideas. So, is that true? Or how do you see the development?
Yes, like with any new technology, it naturally makes certain tasks redundant. Everything gets automated, which makes it simpler, cheaper, and more widely available to a larger audience. But as you have said, it also creates new opportunities. From my experience, I found that AI especially enhances the performance of experts. So, an expert in a particular field can give those prompts much better. They also know the available tools much better and can then use AI much more efficiently to boost their performance. We've seen efficiency gains of 40% for professionals. This corresponds to the experience at the MIT. But when you leave such tools to a layperson, the performance boost is only 10 to 20%. So here again, artificial intelligence is more for experts. Above all, I believe that the greatest opportunity lies in making technology accessible to a wider audience, more people across different sectors and backgrounds. This is the democratization of technology, which was previously available only to a few experts and companies with big budgets. Now anyone can use it. There are even free versions or low-cost options. There are also open-source versions available. And you can see a large spectrum there. Expertise and expert knowledge will still be in demand.
So that means the demand is actually changing. So to say, it's shifting a bit. But we can't really say that many people will be left without work. That's what many were afraid of.
There's always a risk, as we saw during the Industrial Revolution, that automation and technology will eliminate some jobs in certain sectors. Our professional landscape, our job profiles will change. But from my experience, I can confidently say there will always be a demand for more opportunities and new roles. In my opinion, everyone has the potential to innovate, indeed. It's something inherent to all of us. It's our natural inclination. We all communicate with others every day. We all have certain ideas. It's up to companies not to stifle creativity, but to encourage it and provide the means for someone with a good idea to develop a product or innovate. Some companies excel at this, while others struggle. But one thing is essential: perseverance. Innovation often means experimenting, and many of those experiments don't succeed actually. And if you get discouraged when something goes wrong or isn't accepted by the market, and then you give up, that's definitely not a helpful trait. You need perseverance, the ability to communicate clearly, and a strong understanding of people and their problems, with a genuine desire to solve them. And above all, you need curiosity. Lots and lots of curiosity.
And what role does education play in this? Looking back at your own past, your years at university, would you say that your studies were important for these reasons?
Yes, it was absolutely important to achieve a high level of education in school to even be able to study. That's very important. I also see this as a huge societal challenge on a global scale. At university, I was able to focus on computer science, something I've always enjoyed, and I had access to the internet quite early on. Our university already had that technology and made it available to us students. Back then, it was very basic, very slow.
Got it, yeah.
It's nothing like what we have today, but it was still possible to experiment. We could chat with people from all over the world. Later, we could also send emails and connect in work groups over the network. That really had a huge impact on me. I also learned Java there. At the time, Sun Microsystems had introduced the Java programming language, making network programming more accessible and testing it extensively at universities. I had the chance to learn and experiment with it early on, collaborate with other universities, and later work with companies. It's an experience that truly shapes you, teaching you how to leverage technologies early, understand their limitations, and explore their opportunities. Along the way, you build a network with people who are now working in diverse industries across the globe. I had excellent professors. University education plays a significant role.
And don't you think that education nowadays is generally losing some of its value? I mean, there are so many online study options and courses available now. More and more people are actually taking advantage of this. And that's definitely a positive thing, in my opinion. For instance, people in their 50s can now gain new skills or switch careers. But in this context, how do you think education will change in the future? Will it be online or will it be offline?
We humans definitely need personal contact, sure, but it's not necessary for everything anymore. When I was a student, we also had lectures recorded, so we could easily go back and watch them whenever we needed. I see the same thing happening with my kids, who watch learning videos on YouTube to review the material. There are really good educators out there. And they can't do all the in-person teaching. But through recordings, yes, it is now possible to reach a very large audience with these videos. So we can bring information to many more people, making it easier to access knowledge. But of course, it's a pool, meaning I have to look for it to find the content. What a teacher does in school or a professor at university is follow a specific curriculum they want to teach. I can simply sit there, listen to the material, and by the end of the semester, or even after a year, I will have absorbed that content. And it's no secret that we humans are lazy. No doubt. If we want to pass an exam or get a certificate, we tend to just grab the knowledge we need at the moment. But university gives you the chance to learn it as part of a group, from someone who has structured the material in a didactic way and over a specific period of time, and you take time for it. So I'm sure that both offline classes and online activities will still be around. There will definitely be more digital content created and made available, and that will be used. It adds to the quality and is especially important for lifelong learning. Nevertheless, we still want to learn in groups, and in-person learning is great for that. You meet and have a shared goal, a shared topic.
Yes, I can only agree, because I've also seen that there are things I can't explain as efficiently to my son. In such cases, I look something up on YouTube about a certain topic where I might have a gap myself. Then, either we watch it together, or he watches it on his own and then explains it to me in more detail. I think that's great.
Yes, sure. And of course, attention spans are different now. Yes, that's true, and things like that make the world more diverse. All this makes learning much more exciting. And the more variety we have, the more interesting it becomes, and the more everyone benefits. And I think the education we've received here in Europe is at a very high level, but that's far from being the case everywhere in the world. Definitely, the world has a huge gap to fill, and digital content will play a big role in that. And just like in the pharmaceutical industry, we need to ensure that technology and educational content remain affordable for many other countries, where the education level is not as high as in our countries. For instance, I've started a project in Afghanistan where girls can't attend school after the 6th grade, so we're trying to compensate for that now. Through online learning, and it's going to be an exciting project because otherwise a country will lose trained people over decades, as just 6 years of schooling doesn't even allow someone to learn a trade, let alone go to university. It's simply too little knowledge being taught, and this gap has to be closed. And we also have to ensure there are teachers. If teaching stops, there will be no teachers. They'll move into other professions eventually. But we still need teachers, even for this new online content. We need people to guide.
Man braucht die Lehrer ja trotzdem, auch trotz Online-Stoff. Man braucht Leute, die begleiten, die das vermitteln und vermitteln.
Markus, let's shortly touch upon predictive maintenance, as it's directly tied to the IoT. Are there certain limits to it? Can all processes be simulated, or is there always a certain degree of uncertainty involved in predictive maintenance?
It all depends on the data. How well do we know the system? How much data do we have? And is it the right data? Like with many intelligent solutions, the process helps to standardize things, but you need a deep understanding of the systems. Just yesterday, I was at a conference where they showcased a 3D machine, a 3D app basically, digital twins in 3D within a machine. From my experience working on many digital twins, I can say that when you truly understand a system and have plenty of data, you can simulate things accurately, make solid predictions, and make better decisions based on those insights. With predictive maintenance, the goal is to predict when a system starts behaving in a way that deviates from the norm, indicating a potential defect, like when a part of a device or machine might fail unexpectedly. If you have good data and can monitor the system well, you can develop amazing use cases and thus improve efficiency. There are excellent examples, even just using sound recordings. You record the sound of a machine, and suddenly, you notice an unusual noise. Experts often have a keen ear for this. They recognize when a machine isn't running smoothly and can tell when it's time to add oil or replace a particular part. The goal is to transfer this expertise into processes. This is a great example of how far things can go. Today we can simulate a lot, as we have impressive computing capacities, almost unlimited computational power, especially with the cloud. In the past, you had to buy the hardware, but now you have almost limitless access. We also have much more data and many more sensors that can be installed. But the key question is always, how much is still financially viable? When does the use case make sense? And how does the return on investment justify it? It might actually make more sense not to digitalize something.
That means you always have to look at the balance. What's the value I'm getting out of it? And what kind of investment do I need to put into it to make it fully predictable?
Exactly. In many projects, I've often seen the mistake where someone tries to implement something just because it's technically feasible without considering the return on investment. For instance, if a production line stops for 30 minutes, it can mean a lot of money. You can quickly assess a use case like this. For example, if I look at the heating system in the basement of this hotel we're in, if it stops working for half an hour, no one would even notice.
I really liked what you said about the driver and their ear. I can relate to that. I've had similar experiences in my life, like when I was driving and noticed something unusual. You drive the car every day, and the moment there's a new noise, you pick up on it immediately. You just know that's the problem. In this context, I just want to ask you how much human behavior can be simulated or predicted, and whether it's even possible to predict it.
Well, in a limited context, yes. There are crowd simulations where you can model how large groups of people move through buildings, like escape routes. You can simulate that, but it always needs to be validated against real scenarios. How does a person behave in a panic? Where do they run? It's challenging to simulate, but possible. When you input a vast amount of knowledge and understand human behavior, certain patterns can be simulated. Another example is vaccines. During the COVID-19 pandemic, we saw new vaccines come to market incredibly quickly, developed at an unprecedented speed. This was made possible because the process was simulated on computers. Instead of mixing things in a test tube, these processes were simulated digitally, saving a lot of time. Crash tests for cars work similarly. Of course, you always have to validate them against reality, but simulations allow you to run thousands of tests in parallel in a very short time. Once you have gathered enough insights, you can physically verify the results with an actual car in a crash test.
Und erst dann, wenn man diese Kenntnisse gewonnen hat, dann verifiziert man das nochmal physikalisch mit einem echten Auto beim Crashtest.
So, which management system do you prefer, a vertical or a horizontal one?
Yeah, I've tried and experienced different systems myself. In the end, it all comes down to the individual. Can a person interact, and in a horizontal system, are they motivated to look beyond their immediate tasks and broaden their perspective? Or do they feel more secure in a vertical system, where they find clear, defined structures to rely on? It's very individual for both the manager and the employee, depending on their preferences. Naturally, it also depends on the company culture and size. For example, I have found myself very comfortable in a matrix organization. In this case, you have more responsibility, but that's something employees need to embrace. Maybe for younger employees, a vertical system is easier. Later on, a horizontal system could be better to learn and experience more.
For the seasoned, so to speak.
Yes, seasoned, I'd say. People with more experience. Some young people are great at managing themselves. Or some young people want to see a lot more. In that case, a horizontal system is certainly more interesting.
And how do you handle the differences in an international context? There are clear differences, for example, between high-context and low-context languages, which definitely influence communication styles. Cultures, such as American and European business cultures, are very different from those in Asia, for instance. In certain cases, it can also be clients who say one thing but mean another, in contrast to Europe, where people tend to be more direct and straightforward in their communication. Have you encountered such situations in your life? And how do you handle them?
Yes, in Asia, the feedback culture is really different. When working with clients, if you want honest opinions about your product, you have to build a lot of trust first. This means you should break down hierarchies and ultimately communicate with your partners on equal terms. And this is closely related to language. Let's take Japan, for instance. I had a product launch there. and I always sent my American colleague from marketing to gather feedback. Then I finally travelled there myself, and the feedback I received was that they understood me much better because I spoke English more slowly, so they could follow my points easily. And then it was actually a very simple hurdle to overcome, speaking English at a level they could understand, where they could follow along. As a result, they were ready to give open feedback. So yes, there are differences, indeed. You need to be aware of them and be able to navigate smoothly in this international environment to avoid ending up in a situation where you don't get the necessary information or can't build a personal relationship. We are all human after all, so we shouldn't underestimate the human factor.
Markus, Switzerland is undoubtedly a beautiful country, both in terms of landscapes and nature. When you're on vacation, where do you usually go? Do you have favourite locations?
Yes, I really enjoy being in Switzerland. In winter, I usually head to the mountains for skiing, and in summer, I enjoy riding and again skiing. This country is a perfect place to unwind. The mountains are just a short train ride or drive away, and we have beautiful lakes. I absolutely love sailing. In summer, it's a perfect balance for me, and there's so much to explore here. Diverse landscapes, old cities, great restaurants, and an amazing cultural scene. So when I'm on vacation, I actually prefer to be here. Of course, I love to travel for work and visit other countries, but for family vacations, I spend that time right here in Switzerland.
Aber wirklich die Familienurlaubszeit verbringe ich hier in der Schweiz.
You mentioned that you've worked in Asia as well. It's fascinating to explore how innovation is understood in different parts of the world and whether there's a real cultural difference. How do companies operate in Asia? How do businesses in the United States manage things? And what are the key business characteristics in Europe? You've certainly experienced these differences firsthand.
Of course, it was truly exciting, interesting to experience these differences. I'm a big fan of Silicon Valley and the typical approach there, the way ideas are developed, especially through collaboration. People go out, meet others who are open to new ideas, and if they have such ideas, they quickly find investors, customers or partners who genuinely need them. It's very, very fast. I can say I definitely learned about speed in Silicon Valley, how to make innovations quickly and efficiently. Asia is truly amazing. People are hungry. People are willing to progress. That's why they adopt innovations incredibly quickly. What I appreciate about Europe, though, is that people are very critical here. The standards here are high and the regulations are very strong. So if you really want to test some innovative product, does it work? Can we make it in the market? Europe is definitely the continent. Where you can let innovation mature, everything has its advantages. Exactly, advantages.
Und alles hat seine guten Seiten, oder guten Seiten. I
wouldn't say I prefer one market over another. I think true innovation should make its way to all three major markets, and it should also appeal to other markets, for sure. Innovation has to be global, and it has to scale globally, or else we risk staying in a bubble. The world is becoming more and more connected, and we need to ensure that innovation drives progress globally, not just in one region.
Yes, to end on such a positive note, I'd like to ask you, if you could choose where in the world to go to drive innovation, where would you go? Or would you rather stay in Europe?
Well, Switzerland does have certain advantages. Companies here have always been innovative due to the scarcity of resources. The local market is too small to produce solely for it, so many companies rely on exports and cooperation with businesses abroad to survive. The government tends to keep a low profile, and society allows companies to operate within certain limits, fostering a supportive environment. And we're so close to Europe, the US, and Asia, which makes it incredibly easy to analyze and approach markets from here. Our companies have always had to focus on automating processes and eliminating inefficiencies to remain competitive. If you have a high level of automation, you can do a lot locally. But if you need a lot of manual labor, you tend to go abroad, which is why there's a great network of partners here.
Wenn man sehr viel manuelle Arbeit braucht, geht man dann tendenziell eher ins Ausland, hat deswegen ein gutes Partnernetzwerk. Also Schweiz ist sicherlich ein sehr gutes.
So, Switzerland is definitely a very, very good place for innovation.
Eingangs habe ich ja schon gesagt,
I've already mentioned that I consider Silicon Valley a fantastic playground for digital innovation due to the network and vibrant ecosystem you have there. As for Asia, it is still one of those regions where society plays great value on innovation and embraces it very well. However, if I were to start a company now, I would definitely do it in Switzerland. I can highly recommend it.
Markus, thank you so much for your valuable insights on innovation. I hope our viewers have found this conversation really interesting, and that it can help them gain a better, more practical understanding of what we mean by innovation. Thanks again.
Thank you.